On highways where speed, weight, and steel collide, the smallest mistake can turn into pure devastation. Some crashes are so violent and haunting that they leave behind twisted wreckage, unanswered questions, and scars that never heal. In this video, we visit 5 more of the most disturbing truck crash deaths of all time, each more chilling than the last. For a group of families from the small town of Marksville, Louisiana, the beginning of 2019 held the promise of joy and unforgettable memories. Their children had been looking forward to a long-anticipated trip, one that was made possible by months of saving and planning. Parents and chaperones loaded into a van, carrying the hopes of giving the children an experience they would cherish forever. Yet, on a busy Florida interstate, their journey toward happiness was suddenly shattered by a moment of unimaginable violence that would alter their lives forever. The families were part of the Avoyelles' House of Mercy, a Pentecostal church at the heart of their community. The trip was meant to be a chance for the children to visit Disney World after a year of anticipation and fundraising. Among the passengers were 9 children and 3 adults, including Karen Descant, wife of the church's pastor, and Ali Laborde, a mother who was 31 weeks pregnant. On the afternoon of January 3, 2019, the group's van traveled southbound on Interstate 75 near Gainesville, Florida. At the same time, 59-year-old truck driver Steve Holland was heading northbound when his semi veered out of its lane. Dash cam footage later revealed his truck clipping another car before careening across the grassy median directly into oncoming traffic. The semi plowed into the driver's side of the church van with devastating force, killing several of the children instantly. The impact then propelled Holland's truck into another semi-trailer driven by 49-year-old Douglas Bolkema of Albuquerque, New Mexico, creating an inferno as diesel fuel spilled and ignited. The fire spread with frightening speed, engulfing the trucks and the van in flames so intense that they damaged the roadway itself. Survivors recalled regaining consciousness in a nightmare of fire, twisted wreckage, and bodies. Some passengers were ejected, while others were trapped inside. Ali Laborde survived along with her unborn child and her older daughter, though she lost her daughter, Cara, and her niece, Sierra. She later described the terrifying moment she believed death was imminent, closing her eyes and waiting for the end. In total, 7 people died that afternoon, 5 children, Holland, and Bolkema. At least 8 others suffered serious injuries, among them Karen Descant, who sustained multiple broken bones. A 5th vehicle struck debris or possibly ejected victims as the chain reaction of destruction unfolded across the lanes. Emergency crews fought through towering flames and searing heat to reach survivors, but the scene left even veteran responders shaken. The children who never made it home were identified as Joel Cloud, 14, Jeremiah Warren, 14, Cara Descant, 13, her younger sister Brianna, 10, and their cousin, Sierra Bordelon, 9. Each left behind grieving relatives, classmates, and teachers who remembered them as bright and well-behaved students. Superintendent Blaine Dozat of Avoyelles Parish described the immense pain their loss caused in the small school system, explaining that the absence of these children would be felt deeply among their peers and teachers. Their deaths cut into the heart of a community where everyone knew them personally. In the aftermath of the tragedy, families of the victims filed lawsuits against Eagle Express Lines, Holland's employer, alleging negligence and wrongful death. Attorneys representing the families pointed to Holland's history of traffic violations, which included speeding and careless driving, arguing that the crash was preventable. The company claimed he may have suffered a medical emergency, though no evidence was provided. The tragedy sparked further discussion about highway safety. State officials examined whether the guardrails at the crash site provided sufficient protection, acknowledging that in this case, they had failed to prevent Holland's truck from entering southbound lanes. For Marksville, however, the focus was on mourning. Prayer services and vigils honored the children, while relatives and community members clung to faith in the face of unbearable grief. No words could ease the devastation felt by the families of Joel, Jeremiah, Cara, Brianna, and Sierra. Their journey of joy had been stolen, replaced by heartache that would remain long after the smoke cleared from I-75. On a late Wednesday afternoon in April 2020, 4 Victoria police officers went about their duty on Melbourne's Eastern Freeway. It was an ordinary task, one that officers on highway patrol conduct countless times each day, intercepting a speeding driver, carrying out roadside checks, and ensuring the safety of the public. Yet within minutes, the routine became the unimaginable. What unfolded would leave families broken, colleagues in mourning, and a nation shaken. Leading Senior Constable Lynette Taylor, 60, Senior Constable Kevin King, 50, and Constables Glenn Humphreys, 32, and Josh Presney, 28, were each committed officers. On April 22, 2020, they came together on the side of the freeway to deal with a single traffic matter. It would become the greatest single loss of police life in Victoria police history. The incident began around 5 p.m. when Lynette Taylor and Glenn Humphreys intercepted a Porsche 911 traveling at 149 kilometers per hour. Behind the wheel was 41-year-old Richard Pusey, a former mortgage broker. After testing positive for multiple illicit substances, the decision was made to impound his vehicle. 2 additional officers, Kevin King and Josh Presney, were called to assist. Within half an hour, all 4 officers were gathered in the emergency lane, attending to the paperwork and procedures that followed. At the same time, a 19-ton refrigerated semi-trailer driven by 48-year-old Mohinder Singh was heading down the freeway. Singh was severely fatigued, having slept only 5 hours across the preceding 3 days. To make things worse, he was under the influence of illegal substances. Earlier that day, he had been hallucinating, speaking of witches, and reporting visions of stick figures. His erratic driving was captured on CCTV, showing him drifting across lanes and forcing other motorists to take evasive action. Just minutes before impact, Singh's truck straddled lanes before moving into the emergency lane at close to 100 kilometers per hour. Without braking in time, it struck with devastating force. The truck plowed into the police cars, the Porsche, and the officers themselves. Lynette, Kevin, Glenn, and Josh were killed instantly. Their vehicles were spun across the freeway, the Porsche wedged under the front of the truck. Richard Pusey, who had stepped away to urinate by the roadside, escaped physical harm. Instead of assisting, he filmed the scene. His footage, accompanied by profane and mocking commentary, lingered on the dying officers before he fled the site on foot. He was arrested the following day. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Singh, wailing at the crash scene, suffered a medical episode and was taken to the hospital under police guard. He later pleaded guilty to 4 counts of culpable driving causing death and other illegal substance-related charges. In April 2021, he was sentenced to 22 years in prison, with a non-parole period of 18 years and 6 months. Pusey faced multiple charges, including perverting the course of justice, reckless conduct endangering life, and failing to assist after an incident. He was jailed for 10 months. In a separate matter in November 2021, he was convicted again after sending graphic images of the crash in a complaint to a financial authority. Investigations extended beyond the 2 men directly involved. Connect Logistics, Singh's employer, was charged with workplace safety breaches. The company's operations manager, Chris Large, was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment for reckless failures in enforcing safety standards, with a non-parole period of 12 months. Singh's direct supervisor, Simeona Seaman Tutaru, who had prayed with Singh about his hallucinations on the day of the crash, was convicted of breaching heavy vehicle law but spared jail, ordered instead to complete community service. Families of the officers voiced anger and disappointment at the sentence. The community response was swift and profound. A minute's silence at the police academy, flowers at Boroondara Station, flags at half-mast, and Melbourne landmarks lit in blue. Leaders offered condolences, and police across Australia and abroad joined in mourning. Justice Paul Coghlan described the tragedy as one that shocked the public conscience. It was a moment that revealed the risks faced by police officers in the line of duty and the devastating consequences when responsibility and safety are abandoned. What began as a routine traffic stop ended with 4 lives lost, 4 families bereaved, and a community grieving the darkest day in Victoria police history. In the days before Christmas 2014, Glasgow's busy city centre was filled with shoppers and families. The festive atmosphere was interrupted by an event that would leave the city marked by tragedy. Those who set out that afternoon, whether for errands, work, or time with loved ones, could not have foreseen the devastation that was about to unfold. Jack and Lorraine Sweeney, aged 68 and 69, were among those in the city that day with their granddaughter, 18-year-old Erin McQuaid. The three of them were part of a close-knit family from Dumbarton. Nearby, others were also carrying out their day-to-day lives. 29-year-old Stephen E. Tate, 51-year-old Jacqueline Morton, and 52-year-old Gillian Ewing, originally from Edinburgh. All of them were ordinary people caught in circumstances beyond their control. On December 22, 2014, at around 2:30 p.m., disaster struck. A council-owned 26-ton bin lorry was being driven north on Queen Street by 58-year-old Harry Clark. Two other crew members were in the rear compartment, separated from him by a railing. Just after passing the traffic lights near the Gallery of Modern Art, Clark blacked out at the wheel. The vehicle mounted the pavement and began moving through the crowds. For the next 19 seconds, the lorry traveled out of control. It accelerated to 25 miles per hour before slowing as it struck walls, street furniture, and pedestrians in its path. Despite the impacts that slowed its progress, the vehicle continued forward, injuring people and leaving devastation behind it. It finally came to rest partway into an alley between the entrance to Glasgow Queen Street railway station and a hotel. By the time it stopped, 6 people had been killed and 15 more were injured. The crash scene was one of chaos. Emergency services dealt with the casualties, while the public tried to make sense of the destruction. Harry Clark was admitted to the Western Infirmary and discharged on January 7, 2015. Doctors diagnosed him with neurocardiogenic syncope, a fainting condition caused by a sudden drop in blood pressure. On February 5th, he released a statement in a newspaper explaining he had been unconscious and had no memory of the crash. The investigation that followed was complex. On February 25, 2015, the Crown Office announced that no criminal charges would be brought against Clark or Glasgow City Council. Because Clark had been unconscious at the time, prosecutors determined he did not have the criminal intent required for a prosecution. It was also found that no health and safety breaches had occurred. Instead, a fatal accident inquiry was announced, focusing on Clark's health and training, the safety of the vehicle, and the safety of the route. The inquiry began in July 2015 at Glasgow Sheriff Court. Evidence showed there were no mechanical faults with the lorry and that the crew members would have been unable to apply the handbrake because of their seatbelts. It was revealed that Clark's medical history contained episodes of dizziness and fainting dating back to the 1970s. He had previously suffered a blackout while at the wheel of a stationary bus in 2010. Yet when he applied for his heavy goods vehicle license and later his job at Glasgow City Council, he failed to disclose this history, misleading his employers. On June 25, 2015, his license was revoked for medical reasons, banning him from driving cars and heavy goods vehicles. Despite this, on September 20, 2015, Clark was seen driving his car in Glasgow. Neighbors reported him to the police, leading to his arrest. In court, he admitted culpable and reckless driving. In sentencing, Clark avoided prison. He was given a 3-year driving ban, a 12-month supervision order, 150 hours of unpaid work, and an electronic tag. The judge described his behavior as reprehensible and wholly irresponsible, but stated that imprisonment was not possible because he was a first-time offender. The decision not to prosecute Clark for the crash itself caused outrage among the victims' families. The tragedy remained one of the city's deadliest road incidents, leaving families and the wider community with grief and unanswered questions. The morning began like so many others at Eastbrook Middle School in Paramus, New Jersey. A group of 5th graders aged 10 and 11 years old, along with their teachers, boarded school buses bound for a field trip to Waterloo Village, a historic site depicting a Lenape Indian community and canal town. For these students, it was meant to be a day of exploration, discovery, and memories. Parents sent their children off with smiles, unaware of the devastation that would soon unfold. The school had arranged 3 buses to transport the children and staff. Teachers accompanied their students. Among the adults was Jennifer Williamson, a 51-year-old teacher who had dedicated her career to guiding young minds. On board as well was 10-year-old Miranda Vargas, a 5th grader remembered by her family as their princess, a child whose smile was described as contagious. The buses departed Paramus carrying 38 students and 7 adults, including the driver, Hughie Muldrow Sr. Their destination was only about 15 miles away, but they never reached it. At approximately 10:22 a.m. on May 17, 2018, tragedy struck on Interstate 80 in Mount Olive Township. One of the school buses missed the exit for Waterloo Village. Instead of continuing to a safe location, the driver attempted to maneuver the vehicle across 3 lanes of highway traffic toward a break in the median reserved for authorized vehicles. The maneuver was illegal and dangerous. As the bus attempted the U-turn from the eastbound side toward westbound traffic, a red dump truck barreled toward it. The impact was catastrophic. The force tore the bus from its chassis, throwing the cab carrying all passengers into the highway barrier. The body of the bus came to rest on its side in the median, mangled and ripped apart. Witnesses described the scene as horrific, with injured children and adults scattered across the highway. First responders arrived swiftly, joined by passing motorists who rushed to help. Some children escaped through emergency exits at the back of the bus or through the sunroof, while others were pulled from the wreckage. Still, the devastation was undeniable. Jennifer Williamson and Miranda Vargas were killed in the collision. The remaining passengers, 43 in total, suffered injuries of varying severity. Victims were transported to multiple hospitals, including St. Joseph's University Medical Center in Paterson, St. Clair's Health Facilities in Dover and Denville, Hackettstown Medical Center, and others. Some students required surgery, and several were listed in critical condition. Meanwhile, the other 2 buses from Eastbrook Middle School had safely reached Waterloo Village. When teachers there learned of the crash, they quickly turned their buses back toward the school. The children on those buses were initially told they were returning because of an approaching storm. Only after they arrived at the school did they learn the truth. Their classmates had been involved in a catastrophic accident. Parents rushed to the school, desperate for updates. Grief and fear gripped Paramus as families waited to learn if their children were among the injured. The driver, 77-year-old Hudy Muldrow Sr., survived but was later held accountable. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of vehicular manslaughter, 25 counts of assault by auto, and endangering the welfare of children. Records revealed he had 16 prior traffic violations and 14 license suspensions dating back to 1975, including 8 speeding offenses. His most recent suspension had occurred just months before the crash. In the aftermath, sorrow was matched by calls for reform. The crash spurred New Jersey legislators to enact stricter school bus safety laws, including requirements for 3-point seatbelts and harsher penalties for suspended licenses. Congressman Josh Gottheimer pushed for similar federal measures. For the Vargas family, the loss of Miranda was devastating. In an obituary, her parents called her "our princess" and wrote that she had always been an angel. Jennifer Williamson's husband mourned the loss of his beautiful bride, recalling their decades of love together.